Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, everyone. And to all, Cole. You've been very naughty this year. Very naughty indeed. Except for you, Zoidberg.
Alright.
Zoidberg, you get a pogo stick.
What
and
I
no Cole
always
for you. You're the
wanted.
only one who's been nice. Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of ghost buns. And welcome back to the Disney debate. Today is, once again, another special episode because it's Christmas! It's Christmas, and you know what that means. Everyone's naughty but Zoidberg. That's what it means. How's it going there, Kat?
Season's greetings, everyone who listens and watches the Disney debate. We are gonna bring you so many lizards.
And Robo-Doug.
Ho, ho, ho! You've all been so naughty, I'm going to shove coal so far up your stockings you'll be coughing up diamonds!
Diamonds? Well, at least I'll be rich.
Diamonds are intrinsically worthless.
Oh, God. Anyway, welcome everyone to the Christmas episode of the Disney Debate. Like always, we're breaking from our normal schedule to bring you a Christmas-themed episode, but we thought it was very prudent to go back to one of the Christmas episodes of stuff we've covered before, because it's been a few years, and we wanted to cover the Santa Claus 2. We've already talked about Santa Claus 1, and now we have sat through the horrors that is the Santa Claus 2, with, God, Tim Allen and another Christmas movie, but this one is not as good. This takes place 8 years in the future, and, I mean, like, it's clear that they didn't plan this when they started the Santa Claus one, because there's a lot of plot holes, there's a lot of things. From what I hear, the Santa Claus's TV show fixes some of these plot holes, but I haven't seen that. Kat has. But, you know.
Yeah, full disclaimer, so I don't know why I thought this would help me prepare for this particular podcast, but I finally decided to sit down and watch all 2 seasons of the Santa Clauses. Yeah, that was a mistake, because now with the knowledge that I have, I can't exactly comment or make complaints that I had made about this in years prior. So if I refrained from commenting on certain things, that's why. Obviously no spoilers, because I know some point down the line we are going to get around to, you know, reviewing the Santa Clauses, because it just makes sense given we're going through the movies. But yeah, like knowing that, I won't say it makes it impossible to complain. There are still many complaints I have about this movie, for certain, which the streaming show doesn't necessarily fix, like it does, but not in a way I find satisfactory. But we'll get around to that, obviously.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss with this one compared to Greyfriars Bobby. Like, I had fun with Greyfriars Bobby, but there wasn't as much that I could bring out. There's so many things that just, I was watching this movie and I'm like, why did I do this to myself? I do it for you guys. Because there's no other reason I would watch this movie again in this day and age. Robot Santa gives me nightmares.
True that.
In any case, Doug, are you ready for this movie? Have you seen the Santa Clauses?
I've only seen the first 2 movies. I have not seen the Escape Clause, nor have I seen the streaming shows. So no, I'm not ready. I'm never ready. In fact, why did you?
So this was your first time seeing it.
Into this?
Today, Doug McBarry is going to be watching this movie.
Well, I mean, we already watched it. Now we're just talking about it. But, you know.
I'll talk about you all I want. Anyway, Kat, why don't you give us a brief summary of this movie? I'll delve into it a little bit. We can start breaking it down point by point and go from there.
Sure. And trust me, I know this well, because believe it or not, I actually saw this movie in theaters when it came out, and my sisters played it like every year for Christmas. So I know this movie like way better than I really should. So yeah, as you said, the story of Santa Claus 2 takes place 8 years after the original. Charlie is now in high school. Scott's been a Santa for a while now. Things are pretty much running as normal until suddenly he realizes there was a hidden clause in the Santa Claus that he read all those years ago. It turns out, if he does not find a wife by the next following Christmas, which is only a month away, he loses his Santa powers and Christmas is ruined forever. So, yeah. It's clearly somebody forgot about the fine print there. So, that's
somebody in legal is getting so fired.
Definitely. So, of course, the whole plot is that Scott has to, re-enter human society and try to find himself a wife by Christmas so he doesn't lose his powers. Unfortunately, he makes the dumb decision to replace himself with a robot Santa to run things until he returns. Unfortunately, again, a joke we made in Greyfire's Bobby. Remember that episode of Futurama? The one where it turns out there's an evil robot Santa that goes around killing everybody because he deems them naughty? Yeah, that character pretty much appears in this movie, and that's our villain for the entire film. So, yeah, we have...
They pretty much ripped off Futurama for this, because Futurama came out, 10 years prior.
I gotta point out, I find it hilarious that we reviewed 2 movies back-to-back, both of which reference an episode of Futurama. That was totally unplanned. Completely unplanned, but I'm not complaining, because it makes for so many jokes and references.
Yeah. So, on paper, this film could work, because there's conflict ideas here. He has to get a Mrs. Claus, he has to get married, his kid's on the naughty list, he has to deal with that, and there's a robot Santa. So there's 3 plots. I think one of them is a little bit too many, but there's 3 plots that could have worked. The problem I keep having is that I feel like there's not enough substance for each plot, and that they go with the wrong message for each one. And I'm going to start with the first part of the equation here. Oh no, Curtis, who is played by Spencer Breslin, who you may remember as, the Cat in the Hat and...
the Kid.
Oh, God. He was in a lot of stuff in the 90s. God, so he was Cat in the Hat, the Kid, Santa Claus 2 and 3.
He's in the Princess Diaries
the Shaggy
too.
Dog.
Yeah.
He was in the Shaggy Dog remake. So Spencer Breslin's had a weird career, and I don't know why they started pushing him, but they did. He's one of the new head elves. He's Curtis, and he forgot to mention to Santa in 8 years that there is another clause that they found and they neglected, where he has to have a Mrs. Claus. My problem with this is that in the first movie, when they bring it up, they clearly show the fine print, and there's no other fine print there. And then, here, they're like, oh, you just need a bigger magnifying glass to see it. And I'm just like, you're the keepers of this. How did you not know this? How did you not bring it up? But why do you need a Mrs. Claus? What happened to the Mrs. Claus from the Santa Claus that fell off the roof? I have so many questions that the Santa Claus is apparently answers, but I have so many questions.
Exactly. Again, I wish so desperately I could comment on this, but I can't. But I will say, in the context of, before the TV series existed, yes, it does not make a lick of sense why they would wait that long. It's like, why 8 years? Why that arbitrary number? And like you said, what happened to the previous Mrs. Claus? I know we already jumped to the conclusion that, the elves and the previous Santa had planned to have Scott replace him as the new Santa. So obviously, the old Santa didn't die impromptu, and as a result, they had to get rid of his wife and all remnants of him having existed there. But on the other hand, it's like, what about his wife? Did they just tell her to get lost? Did she hightail it out of there beforehand? Like, yeah, it leaves so many questions as to, like, this whole procedure. And it's like, again, 8 years, and they waited until a month before the deadline to tell him this. And I should mention, Curtis knew this, and he purposely did not tell him. Like, even Bernard is saying, shouldn't we be telling him this? And he's like, no, not yet. I'm like, what the fuck are you all waiting for? You do realize you will lose Santa if this does not go properly, right?
Just... No, hold up. Let him cook. We
gotta hold off for dramatic tension.
The other thing about this, as someone who has seen the Santa Claus 3, the escape clause, that raises further questions that I'm gonna bring up later. But the thing is, like, I feel like if there was an escape clause, why have this here? Like, there are just so many weird lore things that I'm just like, these things don't add up together. Especially in a legal definition, because each clause should have been clearly defined. Infinitum, you get nothing. Good day, sir.
I mean, technically speaking, like, the only reason the contract is binding is because he put on the suit. Like, he never, like, willingly gave his consent or his signature or anything like that. So technically speaking, they can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, it's so weird. So, like, my thing here is, I like the idea of him finding a Mrs. Claus. The way they executed that, though, is just so weird and so antithetical to the heart and soul of the first film. Say what you will about some of the creepy elements of the first film, at least it has this heart element to it where it's just like, hey, we want to have Santa Claus be here for millions of kids. You can be that Santa Claus. We're giving you a year to get ready, to understand your role in all of this. That made sense. This doesn't, Doug.
No. It didn't make a lick of sense. It's like you're giving this guy a month to find a wife. It's like that just doesn't happen. I mean, only in Disney movies, of course, but in real life, yeah. In real life, which this is trying to emulate, it's like, no. You cannot find the woman that you're supposed to marry in a month, Ted Mosby.
Hey. You don't know that.
Have you met Scott?
Unless you get drunk in Vegas, go to a chapel.
Ted Mosby, architect.
It's just like, come on. This elf, what's his name? The
Curtis.
Curtis. God.
I heard that, Curtis.
Between this and the stuff that he pulls during the Robot Santa's tenure, it's like, how are you still here? You should be fired 10 times over.
Yeah, I won't lie. Like, when you look at Curtis's actions throughout the entire film, it's very clear that he's the villain of this film. Because think about it. He almost gets them caught at the beginning of the movie when an Air Force plane flies over them because he insists on listening to music, even though they're at ElfCon 3, which is serious, and he should know better than to just play it at full volume.
Even though they could hear alarms blaring in the background, and like he just defends his actions.
Yeah, he like tries to defend himself, saying, "Well, we're encouraged to listen to music." I'm like, not during an emergency where you could potentially get caught. Then, so there's that. He constantly undermines Bernard, who I should remind you is the head elf and is in charge, but he insists that he knows better. He's always like ragging on Santa, saying he's not doing things by the book or he's not doing them properly, even though the council of a legendary figure said that, you know, he's made Christmas so much better since he took over. And then he goes and invents a machine that I think it's a replicator or something that replicates like toys and stuff. Thing. What?
It's like a cloning machine.
Yeah, like a cloning machine. Basically to like make multiple things of toys, which wouldn't that put the elves out of business if you did that? Wouldn't that make their existence pointless? So,
in fact, there is a deleted scene where they're like, oh, well, but we've always made toys by hand. Like, we always have that. That's the whole point of Christmas. And Santa's just like, this will just make it a little bit easier to compete with, McDonald's. And I'm just like, okay.
So it basically turns them into Amazon.
So it's like, I can kind of see that. But the thing is, I don't know why he got Spencer Breslin for this film. And I'm going to say it right now, he's playing the same exact character as he was in The Cat in the Hat. You have to have fun, but you have to know how, and you don't know how, and yet he's uptight all the damn time, and he's a stick in the mud, stickler for rules. Like, it's not fun. He's probably the weakest link of the movie for me, and, like, also, on the subject of how the movie starts, it just kind of opens. I don't really expect much from these direct-to-DVD sequels, but with this, it just kind of opens with, I guess, the military. You said the military. I didn't really get who they were when they were flying over, but
I think
the military flying over.
Yeah, I assume it was one of two possible sources. It's either the military, because I know, like, the Air Force and the Navy or whatever, they do patrol the northern region, since they are technically territories of certain countries. Or it could be one of those, like, those geographical map people, the ones who, like, try to, fly over and, like scale out everything or something. Those are my two guesses.
It just, the way this opens is very weird to me because, like, it just opens with this. And this never comes back in the movie. It's just, we have an airplane flying over. We have to go to ElfCon 1. We use it to introduce the characters. That I can kind of understand. But it never comes back in any way. And I feel it's the most superfluous scene in the movie. I don't know, Kat, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was like you said, for dramatic and, like, dramatic entrance purposes and whatever, and I guess maybe to answer some people's questions, it's like, they're so secretive, what about all those military planes or whatever that go up to the North Pole? Do they ever spot them? I guess it was their answer as to how they pull it off and how they stay hidden, but I don't know, it just, I guess it was just, again, a narrative type introductory thing. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny considering, later in the movie, they're all like, oh, how do we get back up to the North Pole? I don't have my magic anymore, and the reindeer's fat, and we have no clue how to get back. It's like, well, I mean, the military goes up there. Can you try to, like, swing something? Just
like, I like that they do the Molinator, and the Molinator is a fun callback, but that just makes this scene superfluous. Doug.
Yeah, I truly agree. I'm like, honestly, I kind of checked out during most of that scene. I'm like, it is, like you said, it's a very weird introduction to, it's like after all this time, we're trying to get reintroduced to these characters, and that's how you do it?
I hate to say it, but the opening of this film and the way they have things set up, it reminded me of Baby Geniuses a couple times. And you should never do that.
No, we don't talk about that movie.
Because I feel like some of the sets don't work until they're actually in the, like, actual, like, toy factory. When they go to ElfCon, it looks kind of cheap to me, but, like, just the way they turn on the northern lights and the small puns, I'm just like, I don't know. I like a good pun, but a lot of this opening scene didn't gel with me.
I will mention, I didn't really care for the redesign of the North Pole, because, like, when you see it in the first movie, it's actually quite breathtaking. It's like how you would imagine the North Pole looks the first time you ever see it. It's like how you picture it in your dreams as a kid. It is, like, one of the best things about the first movie, just seeing how magical the place looks. And then you see it in this movie, and not only do you see just the toy shop, you see, like, the whole village that the elves live in, which you think would be even more amazing. But it's clear that, they had a different vision, that they wanted to make it look a little more, I guess, kid-friendly, cartoony. It's like, there's still some magicalness of it, but it's like some cheap, like, Christmas Village's idea of what the North Pole looks like.
The first film had such great, not just set design, but costume design. And I feel like this one's a lot cheaper. Obviously, you don't have the same level of budget, but do they really need the budget on the military flying scene or, like, some of the other stuff? Like, it's only a model. It kind of boggles my mind. It's only a model.
You could have cut that entire scene out and nothing of value would be lost.
to be honest, yeah. So it's in that opening scene that we get the first bombshell was that, oh, hey, he has to get a Mrs. Claus, but there's another bombshell that his kid's on the naughty list. And we're gonna kind of go back to that, but, like, this is supposed to be a huge plot point, but really it's relegated to the background until the final third of the movie. This could have been cut. It could have been the premise for an entire movie, or it could have been cut. But, like, it takes away from the two other plots, and I feel like there's nothing done with it. Kat?
Yeah, honestly, they could have just kept it at that. This, the two issues of, oh, he has to find a wife, oh, he has to go, see to his son and figure out why he's acting out. And then naturally the two intersect because the reason his son is acting out is because of this woman who he eventually falls in love with and wants to make his Mrs. Claus. It actually makes for some pretty good tension right there, that story and stuff. But no, we gotta add in a third plot with the friggin' robot Santa. So
yeah, the goddamn robot Santa, and we're gonna get more into that later. I'm trying to kind of break things down a little bit, and then we're gonna delve into them as we go. But I'm gonna tell you right now, the reason why the robot Santa thing doesn't work, one, it's nightmare fuel. Like, as an adult, I am scared by this thing.
Yeah, definitely. Because, it's basically Tim Allen if his flesh and hair were all rubber. It is, like, so disconcerting. It's like you almost want to... It is
uncanny valley.
It's like you want to reach up and just peel his face off because of how unnerving it is. Just, ugh.
And it's... The other problem is Tim Allen's acting. Like, I like Tim Allen. Not the person, but the acting. Because Tim Allen has his own issues when he comes to person, but... When it comes to the actual acting, I normally like Tim Allen. But here, all he's doing as Santa is yelling. That's all he's doing.
I get it. He was basically born yesterday, so he has no, concept of, voice tone or volume. In fact, just, seeing him try to eat and, touch, grab things or whatever is, its own thing, but at the same time, he learns stuff really quick, but he still has that unnerving roboticness to him that just, it's everything you fear about, the Terminator and everything, about AI and, the cyborgs and stuff. It just really puts you at, unease.
The fact that he's always yelling, the fact that, he has the most... nightmare fuel faces, the fact that he drinks the entire cup of hot cocoa, there's just some really unnerving things there, and just every single time I see him, I'm like, this film would be so much better if this plot was entirely removed, simply because every time I hear his voice, every time I see him, every time he does something, I'm just like, this was a horrible idea. Doug?
Yeah, I agree. It is very... very hard to hear his voice, and he's supposed to be like Toy Santa, and just Tim Allen's already been in 2 movies where he played a toy, and he wasn't that annoying. Yeah, he's like,
you are a toy,
and yeah, he really is so much like the robot Santa in the end once he's read those freaking rules that one elf keeps providing to him, and it's like he's so easily swayed to become a dictator. It's kind of crazy.
I also find it weird how he just puts on a dictator costume, and then he just shouting out "Cole, everyone's naughty, naughty, naughty." I'm like, they really did rip off Robot Santa, yeah. But at least Robot Santa doesn't have the most annoying designed voice ever.
And then when he basically, when the end happens and you got 3 different plots coming together at once that don't really make a lot of sense, it's and I think ultimately the robot Santa is pretty easily dispatched when all's said and done. So it's if you had just gotten rid of him and devoted more time to, the love interest and, him losing his powers and, all his son being on the naughty list and him trying to have to deal with that. It's that would have made for a better movie. And not to mention, start this before, a month to go. Maybe give him a year. Make
like
this
the
whole
first
thing take
film.
over, the course of a year like the first one did. I think that would have made a lot more sense. It would have made the flow go a lot more smoothly.
I just I don't like any part of the Robot Santa plot, and it's like when Futurama as a parody is more realistic, you're doing something wrong. But let's split apart and delve into like certain things of this film, and then delve into the plot points. So, one of the big mistakes that they make is that it feels like they're trying to dumb down and kidify this film, but they don't know what tone they're going for, because here Charlie is a teenager and they try to go with the rogue teen angle, but then they have the reindeer speaking it's clear that their voice actors are some of the famous ones from Rugrats, but like they speak in this weird gibberish talk, and it's just like, why would you make the reindeers talk?
Yeah, I don't know why, because I remember in the first one they made like little sounds and stuff, but I don't remember them actually talking. Or maybe it's been a while and they did and I forgot, but I don't remember them talking like that. It's like, whose decision was it to do that? It's just,
it was.
I hope Susie was getting paid enough for that.
Yeah. So we have that, and we have like just like these weirdly disparate elements, because like there's a part that's like, you remember The Next Karate Kid, where like there's a scene where they break into the school. There's a scene like that in the Santa Claus too, where they go Mission Impossible, and it's just like, this is weirdly at odds with the kiddie tone that they're trying to evoke from this and some of the finale, and like the tone is all over the place for me.
Yeah, I just, because like I think by the end of the movie, it kind of remembers it's supposed to cater to kids, because they add a lot more like Home Alone elements to it. You know, with like the zaniness of people falling over and the sound effects and whatever. And, you know, the kids are fighting back against these giant adult-like figures. It just, I'm like, do you really need to cater to kids that much? I mean, your target audience, the ones who watch the first and want to see the second movie, they're, you know, at youngest, they're teenagers now. At oldest, they're adults. So wouldn't it make more sense to have the plot be a little more mature? And it's
but
like,
you
yes,
don't
but no.
Understand. He has a plastic tushy.
I was going to comment on that. It's like, why did the thing have to have a plastic tush? Why do we need to see its ass at all? Seriously? And here's the thing that I don't understand is the whole reason they created Robot Santa is because they didn't want to like say anything to the elves that, you know, he is losing his magic and he has to go away for a while. They're like, no, if we do that, the elves will explode. It's like, really? That's a thing?
Die of loneliness.
It'll go directly to your thighs, and then you'll blow up.
Like, so wait, they would do that if they found out that Santa was losing his magic, and so he has to go away and go on this highly sensitive mission to get it back. But being captured by a dictator robot Santa is not going to make them blow up. Are you kidding me here? And it's like, this never happens at any point in any of the films, not even like the main series. So I don't know whose idea it was to add that stupid thing.
Oh, God. So another thing that I'm going to comment on before we deep dive into plots, they add in the Council of Legendary Figures, which I think on paper sounds good, and I do think the actors that they got to play these characters are great. I mean, first of all, I do want to say that the actor for the Molinator and several of these cast are dead. Rest in peace. Kat, who of the cast is still around?
You said still around?
Yes.
Well, we have Aisha Tyler as Mother Nature, so I believe she's still around. We also have who else? We have Michael Dorn as Sandman, friggin' Lieutenant Worf from Star Trek.
Which is actually pretty interesting casting. So, but unfortunately, the Molinator is no longer with us.
Yeah, unfortunately, Art LaFleur passed away. Jay Thomas, who plays the Easter Bunny, passed away. And as we all know, Peter Boyle, who was actually in the first movie as Scott's boss and is now here as Father Time, he also passed away. And
Which
there's Kevin.
is really great casting.
Yeah. And Kevin Pollak plays Cupid. He's still alive. In fact, he actually shows up in the streaming series, as does Michael Dorn.
So I do want to say off the record, that on paper the Council of Mist, the magical figures, is good. They got good people to play them. There just feels like a cheapness to them, and the fact that they're not really introduced in any way. Like, there is a scene introducing them, but it doesn't introduce them, if you understand what I'm saying.
I mean, do they really need to? Like, I know their costumes are like, basically like mall Santa level designs, but if you look at them, you can easily tell who they're supposed to be. I mean, they're legendary figures. Like, they take on many forms, but the point is, you should be able to just look at them and know who they are. I mean, was there really anybody you had no idea who they were?
Well, no, but I'm just like, part of me is just like, okay, so where were these guys for the first film? How did they meet? Did Bernard introduce them? Like, they say that he's made Christmas better. It just feels like there's a page of the script missing. You know what I'm saying?
I suppose, but I mean, the thing is, another thing I will mention that gets brought up in the streaming show is they make it clear that all of the deities kind of keep to their own thing. It's like, yes, they're on a council and they usually agree upon the most like important of things when it comes to the holidays or just, the world in general. But when it comes to like individual stuff, like the whole Santa process and stuff, they do not interfere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I kind of like, aside from the, climax of the film, I kind of forgot about the council being a thing. But, I mean, yeah, they're all pretty fun. Obviously, like you said, some of them are no longer with us. They don't really contribute much in the way of, the story aside from the Tooth Fairy / the Molinator.
The Molinator, best character in the film, and I'm not joking. That is true because he saves the day,
and of course it is.
We'll get to why, but like he's great.
It is due ultimately to Scott's negotiating skills and having some sympathy for the guy, actually listening to him as opposed to the council just completely ignoring him or outright rejecting all his requests. So, it is good in that sense.
Mm-hmm. It should also be noted that apparently this film grossed $172 million on a $65 million budget. So clearly this did well.
When you build up something like that for 8 years, you damn well better be doing good.
Plus it went straight to DVD, so, you didn't have to worry about box office and stuff like that. It was just... straight,
so like when we criticize, we're not saying that this movie is a bomb. It obviously wasn't. But let's dive into that first plot here. Okay, Santa Claus has to find a Mrs. Claus. All right, on paper, I thought that was a pretty good idea, except for he only has a month, and he goes to the normal world, and he has to go out there dating. And I feel like they needed more scenes of him getting out there dating because they only show one scene, and
that
it's
was
of this
enough.
Really
that was enough. That was so cringe. It
was so cringe. They had this date
10
where
bad dates.
it had a date where this woman bursts into song, and I'm just like, no. I felt secondhand embarrassment in that scene, and I'm just like, no. In one of the deleted scenes, it shows, well, actually two of them. One is Neil getting him ready for dates, and the other is like a quick cut of his dates. I honestly feel they could have had a little bit more of the build-up with Neil. That would have been fine, but some of the dates were like really unnecessary, and it just felt off, especially with the awkwardness of him dating, I don't know, Kat.
No, I agree. Like, that whole scene was cringe. And it sucks because I love Molly Shannon. She could be great when used properly, but it feels like, she forgot for a moment that she's not in Superstar anymore and kind of just goes a little too hard. And it's like, I absolutely hate it when movies, like, they do embarrassing scenes to the point of causing secondhand embarrassment because it just makes that part of the film unwatchable. And yeah, I get it. They were showing that, dating is hard. You're going to run into a bunch of weirdos, especially if they're blind dates. But man, they did not need to go that crazy. And here's a funny little note. The Santa on her shirt, that was actually Tim Allen's face. So if I were going on a blind date with someone and I saw them wearing a picture of my own face on their shirt, yeah, I'd nope the fuck out of there. Absolutely.
Yeah, it seemed a little. You seem a little obsessed with Christmas. I think we need to get Neil on that. Neil doesn't actually have a good doctorate, but at least he could maybe help. Maybe.
Although I will say this is appropriate for Molly Shannon, because if you'll remember, she was in the 2000 version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. She was Cindy Lou's mom, and she was obsessed with Christmas to the point where she covered their house entirely in Christmas lights, all in a vain attempt to win the Christmas light contest. So at least they got the right person to convey this uncomfortable aspect, even if, again, it was pure cringe.
Yeah, it was very cringeworthy. There was a lot of parts that I was just like, yeah.
So at least the actual romance was nice.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, the second half of this plot, I thought was really great. Like, because he falls in love with this principal, who I'm not really a big fan of the actress, because she's like this ice queen who's supposed to be very tough as a principal of Charlie's school. But, like, the actual stuff where they're getting into romance is great. And then there's a scene in the film, which is probably one of the best scenes of the film, where they go to the faculty Christmas party, and he performs a bunch of magic on the way, but then he does the Secret Santa thing with his magic, where he gets everyone these gifts, and they all start, like, having some fun with their childhood favorite toys and toss across, and it's really nice, and it's just one of the best scenes of the movie, and it really sells this romance. I think more of this would have helped the movie. Doug?
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to say, what you call it? I think it was like as soon as the Molly Shannon scene ended, I looked right at Kat. I'm like, wait a minute. Is the principal going to be the one that he ends up with? And she just gives me a look.
Yeah.
Have you seen any movie ever?
Yeah.
I mean, like, the second half of this movie is much better than the first, but it is kind of predictable that, oh, yep, he's getting with the principal.
But yeah, to talk about the party scene, it's like, honestly, it's like, I think we should have gotten to that, like, further down the line, where maybe, like, if they had padded things out a little more to make it a year, and, he's starting to fall for her, and he's trying, all these tactics to, win her glow, and then, convince her slowly but surely that he is Santa, that he is magic. I'm like, really, this should have been the thing that did it. It's like, I get, if after all that in one night, she's kind of in denial, like, what the just happened here? But it's like, yeah, if you had kind of, had the year and you had more time to, like, subtly do this stuff and, build the romance a little more, then, she might have started actually believing in it. But
and that's where kind of like the problem kind of breaks down, is like, if they had more time than a month, they would give more time for the movie to be an actual romantic comedy and work. And like, it's scenes like this that show me the potential of this film for certain parts. But it's like they combine 3 sequels together, and it's just like, and then they have the liar revealed subplot. The liar revealed, because like, she's like, oh, are you trying to play on my love of Christmas when he says he's Santa Claus? And I'm like, it feels like that didn't need to be a part of it to me. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, if they had more time to build up, especially because the end, he's just like, so I didn't tell you, but I'm Santa Claus, and I'm gonna lose my powers if you don't marry me. No pressure, though.
I mean, that's pretty much the whole thing in a nutshell, right? It's like, yeah, I'm in love with you for reals, but we kind of have to get married, like, quick, because otherwise it'll ruin everything. But hey, totally your decision. It's not like lives are on the line here. It's not like the happiness of children is at stake. And it's just... It's like, this is like the epitome of a Disney film in terms of romance. The quick romance, the quick falling in love, the high stakes, the second act breakup, and then, the happily ever after. It just, it's almost laughable given how, they try to have their cake and eat it too in terms of, well, this does take place in the real world, but stuff like this happens, and then stuff like this happens, and you're just gonna have to suspend your disbelief for a bit, just to make the plot work.
And it's like, I feel like the first film struck this really nice tone of, it kind of felt a lot like Miracle on 34th Street, the remake, where it's like, it has this whimsical tone, but it knows when to be serious. Like, the Elves with Attitude bit is not strange in that film compared to, like, some of the other scenes, but here, like, some of this just seems at odds with one another, and if it had a better tone, I would be okay, but it's like stuff like, oh yeah, we have this really great scene at the Christmas party, then, oh, I'm Santa, what? And then lie revealed at, like, the very end. It's just, like, it does not gel well together. So for me, this plot that should have been good, and is good on paper, was just poorly executed and edited. And again, we've seen some of the deleted scenes, me and Kat, and it feels like this could have made for a better romantic comedy. And that's 1/3 of the film. Go on.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I think that they could have involved the elves with helping him with this. Because, I mean, at the end of the film, they actually are helping him to convince her to become Mrs. Claus. And yeah, it's kind of in a, well, you kind of have to, or, you screw everyone here out of a job, but they still managed to do it in a way where it doesn't feel too forced. And I mean, heck, even Judy is, like, feeding him romantic lines to say, till eventually he's able to come up with his own. But, yeah, like, I don't get why they couldn't have done that instead of, like, the whole friggin' robot Santa thing. It's like, you're just keeping the elves out for no real reason. I mean, it's shown by virtue of the first film that they know how to do subterfuge. They know how to incorporate themselves into human society and tweak things just right so that it goes the way they intended. So I feel like that's what this could have been. I mean, if you really wanted to add in any sort of tension or whatever, make it so that Charlie was more active in sabotaging the relationship because he hates his principal just that much.
Yeah.
They could have worked it like that, but no, and it's really a shame.
Speaking of which, we should probably get into that, but first, Doug, do you have anything else to add before we move on to that second plot?
No, I mean, I think we pretty much covered that. I'd say, honestly, what ultimately I think they could have changed about it, is the fact that, if she's going to become Mrs. Claus, she got to drop everything in her current life to, just move out to the North Pole and be there forever. And I think that honestly should have been a more point of tension, because once we finally do get to that point where she does accept Scott and, she is willing to accept his marriage, it's like, oh, well, that means you're here forever. It's just sort of glossed completely over. Like, you're here forever now. Who cares about your old life? It's like, I really think that should have been more of the ultimate
conflict.
Obstacle. Yeah, the conflict of the film. And like Kat was saying, make Charlie kind of the antagonist in that, he's still really upset about her, and, he kind of maybe tries to manipulate the situation that she doesn't want to, live with him forever, in that, she wants to remain the principal, but maybe he, kind of figures out later that there is that soft spot to her. I don't know, but honestly, there's so much better, ways that they could have gone about that. We could probably be here for hours talking about that.
Yeah, like, I'm with you on that. Like, it just feels like they could have trimmed this down a lot and then spread out a plot so that it wasn't so rushed. And it's just like, if you have to have two subplots, the first two at least make sense as clashing, but it just let's talk about Charlie. Sorry, do you want to say anything?
I do want to add one thing, like, again, slightly spoilerish to the TV series, is that they do address the whole thing about Mrs. Claus, and they also address the fact that Carol does kind of find dissatisfaction with just being a figurehead and having to leave behind her old life. So, do know that eventually that does get addressed in the future.
Okay. So let's talk about Charlie. On paper, for me, I think this is a good concept. He's a child when the first film happens. He's a teenager. He's acting out. He's on the naughty list. The problem I have is twofold. First of all, he's on the naughty list because he's spray painting the school with "the principal hates Christmas trees." Huh? This is never dealt with in the movie, really. There's one scene, but it's just the whole point is that he gets on the naughty list for spray painting the school several times, and it goes into this point where he wants to be a bad boy to impress this girl, which doesn't get brought up much, and then all of a sudden it twists to, well, I can't tell anyone that you're Santa Claus, that you're my dad. When was this ever in question?
It's like, I get he probably has to, to a degree, keep the secrecy because he did such a horrible job of it as a child, basically getting his dad in trouble to the point where he got visitation rights taken away. So I imagine after that, he probably was more careful, but now it's to the point where he really can't say anything. Plus, again, this movie kind of commits the fault that a lot of other Christmas films does, in that it wants to acknowledge that Santa's real, but at the same time still maintain the real life thing that Santa isn't real, at least as far as the adults are concerned. Because again, even though, Scott Calvin being arrested as Santa was on the news, and a whole bunch of adults and kids saw him, and they know the truth now, everybody conveniently forgot about that by this movie. So, there are people that still say, Santa's not real, and, even though he is, and it's completely confusing. So, I don't know if it's a whole, once you become an adult, you automatically forget thing, or if you had to have actually met Santa personally to remember it, but it's very confusing. So, I imagine to a degree for Charlie this is difficult because he knows that certain people know he's real, and then for other people they don't, and he has to kind of bite his tongue because otherwise at that point he'll definitely sound crazy. So I can understand the frustration in that sense, but for him to act out by spray painting the school just because his principal won't put up Christmas decorations, it's dude, are you one of those people that's carrying out the war on Christmas thing single-handedly?
You are the war on Christmas. I mean, seriously. But, I have so many problems with it. I get, okay, this world is very inconsistent on if Santa Claus is real or not. My guess, if I had to make a guess, is that there's some sort of Christmas magic that's utilized to make people forget, unless you want them to know, unless they're associated with you. Okay, possible. But the correlation between spray painting no Christmas trees and I can't tell people you're Santa, no, but also just one spray paint puts you on the naughty list?
Well, I mean, as we've seen, it depends on how harshly you take the transgression. Because, Robot Santa looks at what all the kids do, and he's like, well, that's naughty, isn't it? And they're also like, well, I mean, it's not that naughty. I mean, he's just a kid. It's like, no, it's definitely naughty, for certain. It's like, I don't want to say it's a religious metaphor. It's like, are you going to hell because you did this? Or if you did it for a good reason, do you still get sent to hell? So it's one of those weird, morality.
The spirit of the law versus the letter of the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just so confusing, and especially with in correlation to seeing Robot Santa just looking over all these other things, and it's it makes me think of the movie Fred Claus, with how they address the whole naughty nice list thing, and him being the brother of Santa sabotages things so that all of the naughty kids end up getting gifts, because to him, what they did was just simple acting out, and mainly because a lot of them came from bad backgrounds. So he's like, hey, every kid deserves a gift on Christmas, regardless of how they act. And I mean, they're not wrong, really. It's like, who can really judge what is naughty and what is nice? I mean, it's not like these kids are going out killing people or anything.
That you know of. I mean, look at Scrooge's
burning
list.
ants on the sidewalk. But I just don't know. I don't understand what his goal was. It's like, okay, you spray paint these things like showing your clear displeasure with the principal's stance on Christmas decorations. Okay, whose mind are you trying to change about that? Like, what did you think the outcome was going to be? Did you think your principal was going to see this and be like, oh, I didn't realize I was being a stickler about the decorations. Okay, I'll change my mind and put them up. Did he really think that was going to happen? Really? He did not think he was going to...
reminds me of? It's like, it's a Radio Dead Air segment. It's like, I want to know what your thought process was here. Because how did this lead to this? How does this equal this? And was he trying to impress the girl? I guess, but it's not brought up. Like, it's just, it's frustrating. Doug?
Yeah, in fact, you just said it, on the subject of being forgetful. There is a girl involved that we honestly, we spend like a little bit, and it's like sort of a plot with him talking to Scott about, his feelings and all the things going on that's kind of led him to this. And then, like, after that, it's just completely forgotten. I don't even think she shows up in the movie again. But yeah, it's like, as we were saying, it's kind of also like this good place thing going on where, they're counting a whole bunch of things for the naughty list or for, being a bad person that technically you may not even have a lot of control over. Because you don't even know.
This person had a destination wedding. That's negative 10 points.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, so it's like it's much like that in how they haven't really updated the scale for what really qualifies as naughty and nice, and how things have changed over the years, and how a person could be involved, directly or indirectly. And then, it's like, you get that, there's this, that, he's the son of Santa and he can't say anything about it. He's a teenager. He's got the hormones going on. The principal isn't putting up any decorations, but we kind of learn later that she's not against Christmas. She's just not in the budget, apparently, which, dear God, how little is that school budget? I know that, the budget for education is usually pretty bad, but so bad that you can't put up Christmas decorations? I don't really buy that. I mean, you could just chalk it up to him being a teenager with hormones and just, things are going on, and maybe he thinks, because I'm the son of Santa Claus, I that automatically gives me immunity from the naughty list, and maybe he's trying things out, and
if they dealt with that, it just,
again, we'd be here for hours just talking about how much better of a movie they could have made than what we got.
If they actually addressed any of these plot points, and it's like, there's not plot holes here, there's just stuff is brought up and not resolved, is my problem.
Yeah, like, I mean, again, and it also goes to the fact that you got too many things going on, and it's just everything else, that we really want to be focusing on is so rushed in service of, putting a robot Santa in, or having the son be on the naughty list, and the, principal
Speaking of which,
being the antagonist but not being
Santa.
the antagonist.
Speaking of Robot Santa, okay, so here's the thing. The way we described it, it feels like there's 3 plots coherently put together. No. You have a smattering of different plots, and every 5 minutes, the Robot Santa plot is just thrust into it. If you cut out every Robot Santa scene, that would be half the movie.
elves really dumb. Like, who really believes that is actually Santa? Like, I know they made the excuse that he had work done and whatever, but it's like, just from the interactions alone, they should know something is off. But they just go with it. It's like, you are magical creatures that are hundreds of years old. You've seen a whole bunch of weird shit in your lifetime. You mean to tell me you can't tell the difference between this thing and the Santa you've been working for over the last 8 years? Really?
Listen. The Emperor has clothes. You're just not looking hard enough.
It's just, once again, Curtis just gaslighting the hell out of everyone. Just, oh yeah, he's definitely Santa for certain. And Bernard just going along with it for no fucking reason, even though he could easily put a stop to all this.
I will say I do still like Bernard's actor. He's so much better in the first film, but the actor is trying his best. You can definitely tell. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love Bernard's actor. Shoot, what was his name again?
David Krumholtz?
Yeah, sorry, I have to... Yeah, David Krumholtz, I've seen him in other stuff. Like, I love him in the second Addams Family movie. I think he's a great actor, don't get me wrong. And actually, I remember him saying in an interview about this movie that he actually asked the writers if they could ease up on his character, because he felt that he was way too much of, like, a grumpy pants, too much of a downer, too angry in the first movie, which I kind of agree with. Because it's like, you're meeting the head elf for the first time, and he just seems consistently pissed off about everything. And it's like, yes, I get it. You have to train a brand new Santa who doesn't really want to do the job, but this is the rule of the game, so you got to go with it. But the problem was, like, on the one hand, he's a lot more lax in this version. On the other hand, they kind of had to give all that anger and stuff over to Curtis, and it just feels like because of that, now Curtis is the one who's, like, telling him what to do, who's undermining him at every turn, and Bernard kind of looks incompetent as a result. It's like, dude, you're head elf. You've been head elf for, like, 1,000 or so years. It's like, pull rank when you need to, buddy. Like, this is a bad idea. Like, seriously, just man up already.
Yeah, and it's a shame because, like, I love Bernard in the first film, especially the scene where he shows up in the kitchen eating their food. Because, like, that's funny. That's, like, it shows the best parts of Bernard. But here, you see in the deleted scenes, he actually has more of a backbone, and he opposes them having this replicator, and just, like, why don't we just do it the way we've always done it? And, to an extent, you see his process, but you see Santa's. It makes a lot more sense in some of these deleted scenes why things are happening the way they are. At the same time, Bernard is so ineffectual and so barely in this movie that you could have almost cut him. And it really feels bad because, like, yeah, he has one of the best lines. He has a plastic tushy, but not for the right reasons.
Well, I know at this point he was, like, getting older, and it was harder for him to really embody the childlike nature of an elf. Because, like, let's face it, he's the oldest-looking elf in that entire movie. So, I get by this point he wanted to break free of, like, kiddie roles like that and stuff. So, I guess they just didn't really know how to do it properly. And, I mean, he tries his best with what he's given, but, yeah, this film does not do him any favors.
Nor does it do the reindeer any favors. So I briefly mentioned this earlier, but we have Comet, which is voiced by Bob Bergen, and Kat Susi is the new reindeer in training, Chet. Ugh. Who is a Rudolph wannabe who doesn't know how to fly and, like, takes up far too much time. So we have far too much time taken up by these talking reindeer. Far too much time taken up by the robot Santa plot, which builds to a weird climax that doesn't make sense. And one of the scenes I am glad they cut was, like, there's a deleted scene where the principal, with a lot of the female elves, stands up and he's like, "Look in my eyes, toy soldiers, what do you see?" And then they run away, and I'm like, really? Really?
I mean, it's supposed to build off the scene where she faces down a student and does the same thing, and he, like, ends up wetting himself or whatever. But that scene was like, no, that's a little too unbelievable there.
Like, I can understand thematically how it connects, but at the same time, it doesn't work for me. The really thing that works for me is, like, because he loses his Santa powers, they have to capture the Tooth Fairy, the Molinator, And Art LaFleur is great, and he saves the day. And it's like there's a point where they get captured. It's like, oh, what are we gonna do? Well, the Tooth Fairy comes in and gets his kid and whatnot. So it's like there's some really great moments with these mythical figures, even though they're kind of superfluous otherwise. But then you have this climax that doesn't involve anything, and it's just like I feel like so much of this time is wasted, especially in the climax where like they're fighting in the sleigh, and it's very clearly like green screened in. And there's also a part where he's just like, "You, the robot Santa is like, you are a sad, strange little man." I'm like,
ugh. That was as bad as that line in the Shaggy Dog remake where he says "to infinity and beyond." It's like, dude, we get it. You're Buzz Lightyear. You don't have to like insert these lines into those random contexts in your shitty ass movies. Like,
yeah,
really.
it just, and it's like I don't want to hate this movie because there's a lot of parts that I do like, but there's just a lot of missteps, and I can clearly see how it could have been a much better film. It's just there's a lot here that just doesn't work, and it's not as bad as the 2006 Shaggy Dog, I will say that, but with Curtis...
No, nowhere near as close.
With Curtis and the way they handle some of the plots, it feels like they headed in that direction, and it's just like, Spencer Breslin, I don't think you're a horrible actor, but you had some really bad track records for movies.
Yeah, it's a shame, because, I mean, I was never impressed per se with any of his roles. Like, I get what he was trying to do. I think it's just a combination of like not really getting his niche right. It's like he seemed to be like the angry kid archetype in a way, and it's like I guess he has his moments, but I don't know. And I mean, I don't remember seeing any more recent stuff like since he's grown up, so who knows? He's just one of those kids where it's like you have a permanent vision of him as a kid in your mind, and it's hard to imagine him as anything else.
He's just the kid from the Cat in the Hat for me always. What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've not seen Cat in the Hat. I haven't seen The Kid. I don't know if I've seen any of the other films he's been in. And I'm going to assume that he's one of those child actors that once he got out of it, he was ready to be done with it.
Yeah. So, okay.
I will say, though, he had no reason to traumatize Lucy as he did. Again, adding to my belief that he's the villain of this film. It's like, she's like, "Are you an elf?" "No." "Well, why are your ears pointy?" "Because I didn't eat my vegetables." "Do you eat your vegetables?" I'm like, dude, come on.
Lucy's another really great part of the film. It's Neil and I forgot the mother's
Laura,
Neil and Laura's new kid, and she's adorable. She's one of the best parts of the film, and I'm glad she comes back in 3. It's just
Lucy's adorable.
She's adorable, and the fact that like the film ends on her learning that her dad is Santa, and she's like, "I knew it." That part was really great. Like, there's a lot of like really great moments to this film, and I think that's where I'm going to go with my final thoughts. I don't want to keep us here all day. There's a lot that we could say, but I think for me, overall, my final thoughts, this on paper could have been a great film. It suffers corporate meddling, too many plots, tonal inconsistencies, a lot of plot threads that just are brought up and go nowhere. It should have been trimmed down, and it's way too kidified in certain areas. I see the makings of 2 great films in this movie that are smashed together. And then there's the Santa plot. And then there's the Santa plot is like Robot Santa is terrifying. I've had nightmares. Like, I have lucid nightmares, and he has showed up in them. So thank you. This could have been good. This could have been good. I don't think it could have been great, but it could at least have been nearly as good as the first film. As it is, I can't recommend it. There's some scenes that are really good. Check out the Secret Santa scene, but otherwise, I can't recommend this, Cat.
Yeah, I won't lie, this is not a great sequel, but it does have the makings. Like you said, I believe if they targeted toward their older audience, if they made this just a romantic comedy that involves Santa magic, it's like, yes, you could technically say that would just make it a Hallmark movie, which is understandable. Lord knows we have more than enough of those polluting our airways, but I feel like they could have made it work. I felt like if they had the elves involved, if they had Charlie be more of an antagonist, if they, didn't try to like add so many like kiddie elements, like the whole big fight with the wooden soldiers, got rid of the Santa robot entirely, just made it so that, it was more about him learning to fall in love, her like having to come to terms with sacrificing her old life to be with this new guy. Like, it could have potentially worked. Like, it might not have been a Disney film, and like, I know it's missing that big like action-packed climax that Disney likes to do and whatever, but yeah, it's just, I felt like if this was put in better hands, it could have been better, because it's clear that they didn't really plan for any of this. It's probably like after years and like the fan base that developed, they're like, you know what, let's give this a shot. But yeah, they definitely could have thought this through a lot better. And I am glad that with the new series, the Santa Clauses, they do actually address some of those issues and inconsistencies and plot holes and stuff. I feel it's a little too late in some regards, but at least an attempt was made. And I mean, it kind of shows with the fan base that despite everything, they're still willing to come back and watch Tim Allen do his thing. I mean, he's still great in these movies. I mean, yeah, his character's kind of an asshole, but, that's to be expected with Tim Allen's characters. So, I mean, I won't say not to watch it. If you like the first one, you'll probably like this one, depending on how much of a fan you are, how much you're willing to forgive, how much you're willing to ignore. I definitely know there's a lot of people that have seen this. So, I mean, give a watch if you're curious, honestly. I mean, it's not the most egregious thing. It's not the most, hateful, sinful thing. But, I mean, it's entertaining enough.
It's at least free on Disney Plus, and that's more than I can say about some of the other films that we reviewed. Doug, final thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much as everybody else has been saying, there is a genuinely good movie in this. It's just very disappointing that, this was a, straight to video sequel instead of, a theatrical release, where they could have actually taken a little more time to look at the possible mistakes like we've been talking about and, see logical conclusions that could have made the movie so much better. But instead, they went to chase the money and they spit out, just a rushed product, and it is sad. Definitely there are moments in this film that are enjoyable and, do justify it being made. But it's just, ultimately, by the end of it, it's such a rushed mess with, too many plots going on that aren't clearly defined, that haven't really been, really looked at and edited and challenged, that, by the end of it, it's just like, you just want it to be over. And then when it comes to the end, you're not satisfied with how it is. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say give it a watch if you're curious, but if it is also an easily skippable one too.
So with that being said, we have defeated a second Claws of Evil. There's a couple more clauses left, but we're not going to probably do that next year. We have a couple other ones that we could possibly do. I know there's more with Mickey's Christmas Carol sequels, or like Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, or something like that. Because we've done a lot of Christmas Carol stuff, so we might as well do that. But there's also more Santa Claus that we can do. We have a list of stuff that we rotate through for the holidays. With that being said, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of ghost buns.
I'm Kat McBerry.
I'm Doug McBerry.
And just remember, you've been very naughty. Except for you, Zoidberg. Zoidberg is the only one who gets gifts today.
A pogo stick. A good movie.
And if I may end on my usual end of the holiday spiel, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Crazy Kwanzaa, a tip-top Tet, a solemn and dignified Ramadan, a festive Yule, a rip-roaring Saturnalia, an enlightening Life Day, a Festivus to the rest of yous, and if any of that offends anybody, then happy shut the fuck up.
Yeah, if it
Happy
offends
holidays,
you,
everyone.
that's a technical foul. Eight Crazy Nights is a great movie.
It's a movie.
Happy holidays to y'all.
But I watch it every year.